Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests and fellow citizens, today we gather to discuss a concept that has been the subject of much debate in our great nation, one election. This idea proposes the synchronization of elections across all levels of government, national, state and local into a single unified process. But what does this idea mean for Bharat? Can it transform the very fabric of our society, or is it simply a political convenience? To understand its potential, we must first step back and examine what elections represent in a democracy. Elections are not merely about selecting leaders, they are an expression of the people's voice, their aspirations and their vision for the future. But in a country as vast and diverse as Bharat, fragmented elections can sometimes dilute that voice. The proposal of one nation, one election invites us to look at the possibilities for alignment where the political processes at various levels do not clash but rather harmonize. It urges us to imagine a Bharat where the energy of its people is focused, where the rhythms of democracy move in synchrony, creating a more effective and streamlined system. But transformation is never an easy path. Change, as we know, often carries both challenges and opportunities. So, let us look at the 5 key aspects where this concept could impact our nation. Imagine a government that isn't constantly preoccupied with the pressure of upcoming elections. In the current system, elections are often scattered across different states and levels of government throughout the year. This frequent cycle of electoral activity diverts the attention of elected representatives, ministers and bureaucrats who are often caught up in the logistical and strategic demands of campaigning. As a result, governance can sometimes take a back seat. Critical decisions may be delayed, long-term policy initiatives may get sidelined, and focus shifts from implementation to immediate electoral gains. With one nation, one election, the dynamics of governance could shift. By consolidating elections into a single event, the political machinery could enter a phase of stability, allowing elected representatives to direct their energy and efforts entirely into the business of governance, instead of constantly preparing for the next round of elections. This would lead to more consistent and focused leadership, where politicians are not consumed by the short-term pressures of upcoming campaigns and can instead invest their time and resources into fulfilling the promises they made when they took office. Moreover, a streamlined election process could help in reducing the disruptions caused by the regular electoral cycles. Currently, elections at state and local levels can stall national policy decisions or create roadblocks due to the shifting power dynamics between the central and state governments. With synchronized elections, the government at the center could work in collaboration with the state governments in a more organized manner, allowing for cohesive policy implementation across the country. Ministers, lawmakers and bureaucrats would have more time to focus on developing and executing long-term plans, improving the country's infrastructure, healthcare, education and other vital sectors. Additionally, by reducing the frequent electoral campaigns, the system could also encourage greater political maturity. Without the constant focus on short-term election cycles, leaders might be more inclined to engage in deeper, more thoughtful debates on policies that benefit the nation in the long run, rather than simply seeking immediate political gains. This would foster a more productive political environment where the true priority is not winning the next election but rather making significant strides in national development. In essence, enhanced governance through one nation, one election would mean that our political leaders can dedicate their time and efforts to creating lasting solutions, building a more prosperous future, and focusing on the well-being of every citizen in a sustained and uninterrupted manner. Elections in India are a monumental affair logistically, financially and administratively. From the transportation of voting materials across vast and sometimes challenging terrains, to the deployment of security forces ensuring the smooth conduct of voting. Elections are not only an immense undertaking, but also come with a significant financial burden. Every year, multiple states hold their own elections, each of which requires resources to the tune of thousands of crores. The election process consumes taxpayer money in the form of funding for election commissions, transportation, security, polling stations, and the infrastructure necessary to ensure fair and free voting. The media also plays a significant role during election periods, with political campaigns flooding television, radio, and print media. The sheer scale of advertising, campaigning, and media coverage needed for every election cycle is staggering. Political parties spend vast amounts of money on advertisements, rallies, travel, and event management, all of which contribute to an environment of intense financial expenditure. One nation, one election holds the potential to drastically reduce these costs by synchronizing all elections into a single event. This consolidation means that election-related expenses, whether for setting up polling booths, training election officials, or securing voting areas, would be handled once every 5 years, rather than multiple times across the years. The savings from such a reduction in the frequency of elections could be redirected into critical areas such as healthcare, education, and infrastructure development, where funds are often stretched thin. For political parties as well, the financial burden of perpetual campaigning is enormous. By holding all elections at once, parties could significantly reduce their overall campaign expenditures. The cost of election advertisements, rallies, and logistics, which are repeated for every state election, would be consolidated into one national campaign, reducing the strain on party finances. This financial reprieve could allow political organizations to focus more on policy and less on relentless fundraising for multiple campaigns. Furthermore, the administrative costs associated with conducting multiple elections, each year hiring staff, paying for voting materials, securing polling locations, and ensuring voter education could all be streamlined and more efficiently managed. By focusing on a single election event, the government could maximize its use of resources and minimize waste. In addition, India's large, diverse electorate means that significant financial resources are required to ensure accessibility and inclusivity for all voters. Transporting materials and providing services to remote areas often leads to higher costs. With synchronized elections, these efforts could be consolidated, reducing the overall expenditure while improving access to the voting process across the country. By curtailing the costs associated with frequent elections and redirecting those funds toward the country's growth and development, one nation, one election could become a key mechanism in ensuring that India's financial resources are used more efficiently and productively, benefiting all citizens in the long term. The savings would provide an opportunity to strengthen key sectors, boost economic development, and focus on the critical issues that affect the lives of millions. A stable political climate is essential for the long-term growth and prosperity of any nation. In a country as vast and diverse as India, the political landscape is often dynamic and fluid, with elections occurring regularly at different levels: national, state, and local. This fragmented electoral cycle can lead to periods of instability and unpredictability as political power shifts between the center and the states, or even within states themselves. The constant ebb and flow of electoral results often creates an environment where governance is interrupted, with leaders distracted by the immediate concerns of winning the next election rather than focusing on long-term development. The regular cycle of elections can also contribute to a sense of political fragmentation. Different parties hold power in different states, which may lead to conflicts or divergent priorities between state governments and the central government. These conflicts can slow down the decision-making process, create bottlenecks in policy implementation, and sometimes even lead to political gridlock. For example, when state elections are not synchronized with national elections, states with opposing political parties may resist or obstruct national policies, hampering the smooth governance of the country. One nation, one election could address these challenges by consolidating the election process into a unified event. When elections happen at the same time, they reduce the likelihood of political instability between election cycles. The result is a more cohesive, synchronized political environment where the central and state governments work together more harmoniously, with fewer distractions and disruptions from electoral activities. This stability can encourage better collaboration between governments at various levels, fostering a more effective governance structure that works towards the nation's long-term interests rather than being bogged down by the immediate demands of political campaigns. The synchronization of elections would also help in curbing the frequent changes in government leadership. As the central government, state governments, and local bodies would all be chosen at once, the chance of frequent political upheaval would be reduced. Politicians and policymakers would be less inclined to shift their priorities in response to shifting political tides. Instead, they would focus on fulfilling their term and developing policies that address the country's broader needs, creating a more steady environment for growth and development. A stable political climate also offers greater predictability both for the electorate and for investors. Citizens can have a clearer understanding of the political landscape and the direction in which the country is heading. Investors and businesses can plan better, knowing that the political framework is likely to remain consistent throughout the electoral cycle. This sense of stability encourages both domestic and foreign investment, spurring economic growth and fostering a more robust business environment. Furthermore, by consolidating elections, political parties may have more time to focus on their policy agendas instead of campaigning. With less pressure to constantly be in election mode, political parties could engage in more thoughtful, issue-based debates. These debates could be less about winning votes through populist measures and more about discussing sustainable long-term solutions to the nation's problems. Overall, one nation, one election could bring much-needed stability to India's political climate, creating a more predictable, productive and collaborative environment for governance. By reducing the frequency of political upheavals, minimizing conflicts between state and central governments, and encouraging more policy-focused discussions, the proposal could lay the foundation for a more stable and effective democracy. Voter participation is a cornerstone of any democracy, and in a country like India where elections occur frequently at various levels, participation is essential for reflecting the true will of the people. However, despite the importance of these elections, voter turnout in India has often been inconsistent, with participation varying significantly between state and national elections and sometimes even within different regions. Multiple factors contribute to this low turnout, ranging from voter fatigue due to frequent elections, to lack of awareness or interest, to logistical barriers such as difficulty in traveling to polling stations. One nation, one election could transform this situation by turning elections into a singular, highly anticipated national event. Rather than spreading the electoral process across the calendar, concentrated into a single, unified moment, it could generate greater energy and enthusiasm among voters. A single action would make it clear to the electorate that their participation has national significance, rather than feeling like just another regional or local contest. The gravity of a national election could attract more people to the polling booths, especially when the stakes are seen as higher and more encompassing. A synchronized election would also help overcome voter fatigue, which has often been a problem in India's fragmented electoral system. Voter fatigue can be particularly acute in states that go to the polls frequently, leading to disengagement and apathy. Citizens who have cast their votes multiple times in quick succession may become disillusioned or less motivated to participate. By consolidating all elections, one nation, one election could streamline the process, making it a less frequent but more impactful event, reigniting voter interest and ensuring that more people head to the polls. Additionally, a unified election provides an opportunity for broader, more inclusive voter education and awareness campaigns. In India's diverse society, election-related information is often distributed in a fragmented manner. Different campaigns target different regions, focusing on state-specific issues or candidates, which can confuse voters or lead to unequal levels of awareness. A single coordinated election could allow for a more focused and cohesive voter education strategy. This strategy could use national media outlets to communicate the importance of the election, the candidates and their platforms in a more consistent way, ensuring that all citizens, regardless of their background or location, have access to the same information. Moreover, organizing a single election event could make the process logistically simpler and more accessible for people across the country. With multiple elections, logistical challenges often arise, especially for people in rural or remote areas who might find it difficult to travel long distances to vote. By aligning the elections, it would be easier to plan the necessary infrastructure and ensure that more polling stations are accessible, reducing the barriers that prevent people from voting. Improved access to polling stations, along with better voter education and awareness, could motivate more citizens to cast their votes, leading to higher participation rates. A synchronized election would also encourage a more comprehensive national-level debate. Instead of voters being focused only on local or state-level issues, they would have the opportunity to think about the broader picture national policies, the country's future direction, and the vision of political parties on a macro level. This larger perspective could inspire more people to engage in the electoral process, as they would understand that their vote contributes to shaping the future of the entire nation, not just their local area. In essence, one nation, one election has the potential to make voting a more impactful, accessible and anticipated event. By consolidating elections, the frequency of electoral cycles would be reduced, voter fatigue would be alleviated, and a broader national conversation would emerge, helping to increase voter participation. As a result, the electoral process could become more inclusive and reflect a more accurate representation of the people's collective will, strengthening the foundation of India's democracy. Bharat is a land of immense diversity, rich in languages, cultures, religions, and regional identities. This vast and varied landscape gives our nation its strength, but it also presents challenges when it comes to building a cohesive sense of national identity. While each region and state has its own unique concerns and aspirations, there is often a risk that these diverses can become fragmented and disconnected from the larger national narrative. This fragmentation can sometimes foster regional tensions or create a perception of disunity, as citizens focus on local issues rather than a collective national vision. One nation, one election could serve as a powerful tool for fostering greater national unity. By aligning elections across all levels of government, national, state and local into a single event, we can create a collective sense of participation and shared responsibility. Voters would no longer see themselves as merely citizens of a state or region. They would recognize that their choices have an impact on the nation as a whole. When elections are held at the same time, it reminds citizens that despite our differences, we all share a common purpose, the progress and well-being of the nation. The synchronization of elections would encourage more dialogue and reflection on issues that affect the entire country, rather than focusing exclusively on regional concerns. It would shift the conversation from parochial politics to broader national issues such as economic development, national security, social cohesion and environmental sustainability. Voters in turn would have a clearer understanding of how their individual choices contribute to the country's overall direction, rather than seeing their vote as only impacting their local or regional context. One of the unique benefits of synchronized elections is that it could help break down the barriers that sometimes exist between different regions or states. Regional political parties, which often focus on issues that pertain to their specific areas, could be challenged to think beyond state boundaries and engage in discussions that have national relevance. This could lead to a more inclusive political landscape where regional concerns are addressed in the broader context of national development. It would encourage leaders to think in terms of the collective good of the nation, rather than just catering to state-specific needs. Furthermore, when elections are synchronized, the focus of political campaigns would shift from localized, often divisive issues to more comprehensive, nation-building agendas. Political parties would be forced to address concerns that resonate across the entire country, fostering a sense of solidarity among people from diverse backgrounds. National issues like poverty alleviation, education, healthcare and infrastructure could become the central themes of electoral campaigns rather than issues that are solely regional in nature. This broader perspective could nurture a deeper sense of connection among citizens as they begin to see themselves as part of one united nation rather than isolated, disparate groups. The act of participating in a single, unified election could also reinforce the idea of a shared national identity. When citizens across the length and breadth of Bharat cast their votes on the same day, there is a symbolic reinforcement of unity. The very act of coming together as one to determine the future direction of the country can foster a sense of belonging and strengthen national pride. It reminds citizens that despite the diversity of languages, cultures and traditions, they are all part of one political and democratic entity working together for a common future. Moreover, the election process itself could be a celebration of India's unity in diversity. A unified election would bring people together to participate in a national event that transcends regional differences, reinforcing the idea that while we may have different ways of life, we are all united by our shared commitment to a better future for Bharat. In this way, one nation, one election could play a transformative role in strengthening national unity. By creating a single, cohesive electoral process, it would serve as a reminder that the strength of Bharat lies not in its divisions, but in its collective resolve. It would nurture a sense of shared destiny where citizens, regardless of their regional or cultural identity, come together to shape the future of the entire nation. Through this unified approach, Bharat could move towards a future that is not fragmented by differences, but united by a common purpose to build a stronger, more prosperous and harmonious nation for all. In conclusion, the idea of one nation, one election is not just a political proposal, it is a vision for a unified, stronger and more efficient Bharat. It is a chance to bring governance, finances, voter participation, and national unity into a harmonious rhythm, aligning the energies of millions of citizens with the future of the nation. While the path to achieving this vision may be complex and require thoughtful consideration, the potential benefits are undeniable. By creating a stable, focused political climate, reducing financial burdens, and encouraging more active participation from the people, we are looking at a future where governance is more effective, where every vote counts, and where every citizen feels a deeper sense of belonging to the larger national narrative. The diversity of Bharat will remain its greatest strength, but through one nation, one election, we can amplify the voice of unity that binds us all together. Let us move forward with wisdom and determination, united in our purpose to make this vision a reality. Together we can shape a Bharat that is not only strong in its diversity, but even stronger in its unity. Thank you.